Okay, this is video 4.5. It's actually a re-record after I had a little tech glitch. So if you see any discrepancies, that's why. I've got my materials, I've got my piece of paper towel that I can use to protect the piece, and we'll try to pick up where we left off. So where we left off in the video, we were just shading along this edge lightly, creating that very light shadow that occurs on the light side as it begins to wrap around. So we're using basically we're using our level 4 here on the value scale. And I'm using my HB pencil. So I'm just shading right up against the edge in the direction that that cylinder is going. Would be vertical, but I've got my paper rotated to make it a little bit easier to shade. So just really small marks along that edge. And it actually does get a little bit darker maybe at the bottom. And this is a good time, again, to just make sure that you've got all of these edges exactly where you want them. Double check them. Take a moment to stand up and look at your piece or hold it out in front of you. And that'll help you see if there's anything you need to fix. So as I got here to the bottom, then I'm starting to go side to side with a little bit of curve following that bottom edge. And I've got that buffer zone created. Notice if I hold this up to the camera, I have not created an even edge here. No, it's a little bit out of focus, but there we go. But you'll see that I created sort of these hatch marks and this uneven edge so that I'm going to be able to more easily create this smooth gradation going out. You might also see here something that I've done on this second time around is just kind of marked off lightly. All right, this is where I want it to be my reflected light, so shading at a level 4 or 3, then moving into that core of the shadow, so that level 1, then getting a little bit lighter still until we fade into this white area here. So really lightly I've marked it, and I'm going to erase those markings as I go because we don't want to see any lines at the end. Right, so then I can come back up here and I can shade lightly on top of what I did with a little bit of a curving mark. So we're not trying to make it darker, but we do want to have that fade out happen. And in fact, you know what? We don't even have to shade on top of that. I'm going to get a clean blending tool. I do have one left, great. And we can even just make those marks going that way as I'm blending. So notice this is a really, really important area to have a really small blending tool with a really pointy edge. So I'm getting right up to that edge, but I'm not going to the other side. So what not to do would be this. What you want to do instead is this. So if you need to add a little more shading with your pencil going in that direction too, you can. If you did get any places that are a little too dark, which I did when I was then doing a little bit of shading the other direction, I can just really tap them, basically stippling with my eraser to lighten those up. And we will actually create a little bit of a shading here as well. It's just going to be very, very light. So I can continue to shade up here even lighter than I did over here. So going up this side of the cylinder. And I think I actually do that in a later video as well. So you may see this get repeated later. But that might help you create more of that smooth transition. And then if you need to make sure there's contrast, I might get a little bit darker on the other side of this. So still pretty light. At the darkest, this would be your medium. But maybe even a little bit lighter, maybe even sort of between that 2 and 3. So you want both of these areas to just transition smoothly. So here I'm just adding a little bit more to these shaded areas in this buffer zone, just to make sure that I can then smoothly create that transition. As I am using the blending tool. And if you see a hint of like an outline here, you would want to keep working on that to either make it a little bit lighter or to make the area right next to it a little bit darker and then smoothly transition to white. Again, keep that smooth edge, that really firm edge as you're using your blending tool by not ever crossing that firm edge. So I can go side to side this way with the line and then go this way really carefully without crossing the line. And anywhere that is not quite a smooth line here, I can touch up with my eraser if it's not happening smoothly. So again, using that eraser as a drawing tool as well as the pencil. And that's why you're going to need a really, really sharp tool. So in fact, I'm going to switch to an even pointier eraser there. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up from there with a little bit more shading, creating this smooth transition here, and a little bit more definition along that edge. So maybe since I was working along this edge, I'll start up here a little bit, just creating a really light shadow underneath this lip here. So just at this edge, so just kind of where this little bit of a shadow is happening on the light side. So I can shade along this direction a little bit here, and then switch to this curving direction here at the edge of the ellipse where that rim is. So just the light marks, just that value number 2 or so. And then as we go across here, so I've got my darkest, number 1, number 2, Now I'm going into number 3, and then from here it'll start to get really light. So I'm just going to make sure that any marks that I made, I did make some marks for myself to see when those changes would occur. I'm just erasing those so that they won't be visible after I do my shading. Okay, so now that I've got those marks gone, I can connect this shading. So I'm probably going to use a 2B here, since now I want to be in this medium value range. So shading side to side with that little bit of a curve, connecting to where I was using the graphite stick. And then as I get up here to where I had that line to transition into white, then I'm going to use my HB pencil. And I'm going to want to make this edge pop out, so I will shade all along this edge just really lightly. So using my paper towel to make sure that I'm not smudging my work as I go. So I'm creating little hatch marks and not an even edge here so that I can blend that out really smoothly. So same thing here, don't want an even edge, just starting to use really light hatch marks there. So switch back to my 2B pencil, again just connecting these different areas. And in that 4 transitioning into 3 range, and then moving over here, then I'm in that 2 to 1 range. So, and I am shading over top of a lot of this area where I already used the graphite stick to make those values more consistent. I should say the texture is more consistent. And I can also use my blending tools here. Now this blending tool does have some graphite on it. It's a little bit dirty. So here is actually making it too dark, but here it's actually helping me, so I can use that to actually create some of that in-between shading that I want. So over here, I'll need to get in here with a little bit of a cleaner blending tool, make sure that I don't end up with kind of a line there by accident. I'm doing that really carefully so I never go over that crisp edge. I can go right up to it but not over it. If it got too dark, I would just go back in with my eraser and kind of stipple there a little bit. All right, and then as I keep moving down, I'm going to do the same thing, going over this with maybe my graphite stick a little bit some more to make this darker, and also my pencil, going from maybe my 4B to 2B to HB, and then maybe just finishing that up with that blending tool.